Project for today is going to be this John Deere LX186. I got this at an auction. I mainly just wanted it for parts, but I think I might have paid a little bit too much for it. It was in a lot worse shape than I thought it was. It was missing all this parking brake mechanism here. It was missing the seat. The throttle moves. The steering is a little bit hard, but that should be fine. But it does have a Kawasaki engine in it, a 17 horse Kawasaki. So I'm hoping this engine is good. So we'll dive into that. The gas tank, I'm sure, is awful. Oh yeah, that looks like maple syrup in there. So we probably will just not even use the gas tank because I'm not going to be getting this one running to use. I just want to get the motor running and make sure that's good. And we might, if it'll drive, we'll try driving it around a little bit just to make sure we have a good transaxle and everything. But this will more than likely be a parts machine. But I'll get you set up and we'll get started, see if we can make it run. So I'm going to pull this hood completely off. Got, the hinges are broke. The hood's pretty much shot on the top half, but these were a two-piece hood. So the lower half isn't terrible, but the hinges are busted off, so that makes it not really too usable. You can see right here the hinges broke inside there, and then this side it's just snapped clean off. So that'll be mostly junk. The motor does turn. I don't know if they tipped it over or what. There's a bunch of dirt and gravel and stuff on it. But I think I'll turn the fuel off here. This piece out of here so I could get to the fuel line better. That was busted anyway. They gave me all the pieces to the hood, so you could technically zip tie it all back together if you wanted to, but I don't really need one of these hoods right now, especially if the hinge part broke. That's not an easy fix. So I think we'll get, I did get it didn't come with a key, but I did have a key I threw in it and I turned the key on, but there's nothing happening, so I'm assuming that battery's dead. I think I'll disconnect the fuel line here so we don't suck anything from that tank, and then I'll just hook a auxiliary tank to it. Oh, that busted that. Broke that fuel shut off. These fuel lines are pretty much petrified. I might just take the whole thing off. We won't have to deal with that. You can see that broke off the end of that. These fuel lines are rock solid. So I'll see how I can get a auxiliary fuel tank set up on here, and then we'll see if we can get it to turn over first. I guess I'll put the jumper pack on it and we'll see if it'll turn. We'll check the oil, make sure we got oil in it. The oil's kind of dark, but that doesn't look too bad. And it's at the full mark. We'll see if it'll spin over. We got nothing. I can hear the blade or the PTO clutch is engaging, so that's something. The seat switch been disabled. There we go, I got the parking brake to stay on. The solenoid's clicking, but it's not kicking it over. There we go. I might just have to jump the solenoid to get this one to work. That seems like it turns over okay. I'm sure we're probably gonna have to go through the carburetor, but it's worth a shot to just hook up the fuel tank. I'll take this air cleaner cover off and see what we got going on under there. This did come with the mower deck too, so I can use that mower deck on a different one. It actually looked like it was in decent shape, so it's not too much of a loss. Didn't look too bad in there. There has been mice in there. You can see the mouse crap over on the side, and they ate this half of the air filter. It actually looks fairly clean down in there by the carburetor. There's some junk in there. That's where the other part of the air cleaner went. But it should be fine to see if we can get it to fire up anyway. I'll see if I can get a tank hooked up to it. Maybe I'll put a vice grip it down here, and I have it on a stand, so it'll sit up about this high, so it should just gravity feed if that fuel pump's not working. So we'll see, maybe I'll just go to this lever since we're not going to be using that anyway. Well, maybe I'll just stick with trying to clamp it down here. I'm just kind of nervous it's just going to tip over on me though. There, I got it kind of slid underneath here and put the clamp on. I don't know if that'll hold or not, but we're not looking to hold it there for too long. It's long enough to give it a test run. I'll throw this air cleaner back on before we test it. I don't want to suck a bunch of junk in there. I took the foam off of that one. Other than that foam being chewed, it didn't look that bad. These Kawasaki singles were really tough engines, so I'm thinking that this should be a good runner unless it's a smoker. Some of them would end up smoking if people didn't change the oil in them very often. So I'll hook the jumper pack back up and we'll spin it over a little bit. I don't have too high hopes that it'll go, but you never know with something from an auction. Sometimes it's just something simple that was wrong. So we'll see what it'll do. All right, I got the jumper pack hooked back up. We'll try it with the key one more time just to see if that solenoid will start working. Well, I'm shocked that ran like it did. It actually didn't run too bad. It smoked a little bit, but I think it was just overfueling because I had to choke it a few times to get it to keep running. But I think I'll pop the float bowl off real quick and we'll see what's going on in there. So I've got the gas shut off, but it was dripping out of the carburetor. I think it's coming from up here. We'll pull I'm sure the float is probably stuck is what's going on, but we'll pull the air cleaner back off and see what we see down in there. Drop some stuff in there. Doesn't look like it's overflowing up into here. Might actually be coming out of just this piece. But I'm gonna pull that float bowl off anyway. And we'll see how the carburetor looks. Well, it's not too bad. There's just a little bit of dirt down in the bottom. And we'll pull that float out of there too. GoPro, stop recording. Oh, that pin is pretty stuck in there. I've got a punch for it, but I'm kind of nervous it's gonna I don't want it to go flying out of there. I think it might be loose enough now I can get it. It came out of there. So the bolt that holds the float bowl in is kind of a jet here you can look through, and it was pretty much clear. I kind of expected that. You can kind of see through the end. There's holes in the side, so if I shine the light in the side you can see up through it. I got the float bowl cleaned out. We'll turn the gas on for a second and flush that out. That seemed like it's flowing okay. So I think I'll put the float bowl, or the float and the needle back in it. turn the gas on while I'm holding this up and make sure that seems okay. It might be that needle has a kind of like a rubber tip on it. That might be swollen or something because they don't get much movement out of that float. So I pulled the float back out of there because that didn't seem right. I had it upside down was the problem. That's why it's important to always check that stuff. Now there's quite a bit more movement out of it. We got that back in there. I'm gonna run a piece of wire up through the center. There's usually a jet in the center of these carburetors. I'll go up through the middle. I felt like it was pretty clear. It was a lot cleaner than I thought it was going to be. Must have not sat for too long. I'll turn the gas on again and we'll see if it ends up leaking. Oh yeah, it's leaking all around the float bowl. I'm gonna turn the gas back off. I'll loosen it up. I'm not sure what we got going on here. There is a gasket up in there, but maybe it's just crushed too much. I'll see if I have a gasket like that to pick that one out of there. Yeah, that one's hard as a rock, just like the fuel line. It's just coming out in pieces. There, it fell out. You can see that is pretty much toast. I'll go see if I got another one of those. Well, I did have a float bowl gasket for it. I had an actual Kawasaki float bowl gasket. This was one I had just laying around that didn't fit, but I was shocked that I actually had a float bowl gasket for it. I don't carry too much of the Kawasaki stuff, but we sealed up the carburetor, but it's leaking out of the end of this fuel shutoff valve. So I think I'm just gonna end up leaving that and we'll try test running it with it the way it is. I'm gonna get it going and we'll probably run it outside and we'll blow through some of these holes and blow some of that junk out of there. And then, well, we'll see if it'll actually drive first. I don't even know if the transaxle's any good, but I'll lower it down and put a little bit more gas in the tank and we'll see if it'll move under its own power. All right, we'll give her a shot, see if it'll fire up again. It doesn't run too bad. It's leaking fuel pretty good again. I'll have to figure out what's going on there. So the float bowl gasket had kind of rolled in there, but there really shouldn't be fuel up that high in that high a quantity anyway, so our needle is not sealing. So what I'm going to do is end up just pulling the carburetor all the way off. I pretty much already accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. I know this is a decent running engine and the transaxle actually works, the hydrostatic, so I know that's good. So it's a good parts candidate, but I just wanted to take it for a quick drive for the video's sake. But it was flooding out last time I ran it, and then it started to actually run lean, so something must be getting in there. I think I'm gonna hook this line directly to the carburetor when I get done, because we're probably flushing junk out of this fuel pump, and there is a filter in the tank in here, so that's not the issue. But we'll pull these two bolts off here, and then we'll be able to pull that carburetor off of the engine here and see what we're dealing with. So I'll pull this off, get this out of the way. Just a couple 12 millimeters. And then I'll pull that fuel line here. There's a little vent hose there. The gasket stayed on the head there, so that's okay. You kind of just gotta pull this spring off first, and then the linkages can come out. And you just kind of twist them down. They're just like a Z-bend. And there's the carburetor. So we'll get that on the bench. We'll pull the float bowl off and see if there's junk getting down in that fuel line. So I've got a pop-off tester here. We'll just test it real quick. I'm thinking that it is actually holding. It's holding all the way up to 10 psi, so I don't know why it was running like that. I thought maybe it was leaking out of here, but then I saw it coming down the side of the float bowl. But then it was running with the choke on only, so I assumed we sucked some junk up in there. But that looks fine. Unless our little fuel solenoid quit working, I'll test that. I'll have to get the punch to pop that pin back out again. Looks pretty clean down in there. I'll try blowing some air through here. That seems like it's clear. I'll run a wire through the jet in the middle there again. Make sure that's tight also. And that seems clear. There's a little junk up in there. I'll blow out. I guess I'll do that and I'll throw it back together and see what's going on. So I'll show you real quick. If you watch that pin down in there, so I had to put a jumper wire on because this has to be grounded to the machine. But if you can see that pin down in there, that should move backwards. It's not really moving, so that's probably our fuel starvation issue. And I should have, well, there it goes. I don't know if you can really see that or not, but it is moving. Just, you can hear it snapping. Okay, so that is working, so that's a good thing. Otherwise, these are pretty expensive, which this one's leaking anyway, so it needs to be replaced, but I don't usually like to, a lot of guys will say they'll just cut the end of that pin off and then put it back in, but when you shut the engine off, if you're at a higher throttle, when you shut the engine off, even a lower throttle sometimes, the engine continues to spin after you turn the key off, so there's no spark, but it's really hot still after you've been mowing for a long time, and it's still sucking fuel up there, and then you'll get that really loud backfire a lot of the time if this isn't working. That's why these were the anti-backfire valves, they would call them on some of them, that would keep it from doing that. So it is a good thing to have it on there. It's good for not hurting the valves or anything with a big backfire like that every time you shut it off. But we'll get this put back together and we'll see if it'll work now. I was trying to kind of orient it so I know which way that has to go. Oop. I'll just put it on loosely, and that way I can adjust it when it's on the mower. I think it went something like that though. I'll blow the top off with air here, but there is another passage here that needs to be cleaned. So I got it pretty cleaned off, just blowing it off with the air gun. I'll take this screw out here. There's a little retainer on that. Oh, that wasn't even. Oh, that one just pulls out of there. It doesn't. It's been a while since I've done one of these Kawasaki carburetors. So then you can see there's a hole in the bottom and then there's holes in the sides. You just have to make sure those are clear. I've got some, this is actually piano wire, and I just kind of spread it all apart to individual strands so you can get through these really small orifices. Can be hard to find anything to get through the holes. This works pretty good. But this all looked pretty clean. So I'm not sure what our issue was. Look down in there too. See if there's any gunk in there. There was actually a little piece of grass down in there, but I'm not sure if that just came from us taking it apart, if it dropped down in there, if that was actually in there, but that would be causing an issue if that was plugging that off. So I got that back in there. The rest of it looked pretty good. So we'll see if it runs decent now. Hopefully we fix that leak. Looks like our vent tube here has some junk in it there. I'll clean that out. and we'll get throwing it back on. So this vent tube was completely plugged with like those mud daubers, put a bunch of dirt in there, and I got that cleaned out, and that could have been part of our fuel starvation issue. If it was plugged, you're getting airlock, so the fuel is coming in, it has to have a place for the air to escape as the fuel is coming in. So I'm hoping that was our issue. So we'll put our linkages back in like that, and then that spring goes back down through the same hole that the throttle linkage was in. That's that. If I was doing this for a customer or something, I would clean up all that stuff. It's not usually good to put stuff back together dirty like that, but we're just kind of proving that this is a good running engine to put in another mower. Then I'm gonna run this fuel line directly down to the carburetor instead. That way it'll bypass that fuel pump if that was causing any of the issues. So now we can put the air cleaner back on. I'm still dripping a little bit out of that fuel shut-off solenoid, but that's okay, I can live with that. So we'll fire it up again and see how it works this time, and then we'll get it outside and we'll blow all that junk out of there. Well, I'm gonna call that good enough. Put the air cleaner. I stuffed a rag down in there to keep the debris from getting down in the carburetor, but there was a hole in the side there that made it easier to get through, so I blew through there. That's that. I think we can take it out back and go for a little test drive with it and see how it works. Well, I've got it out back. We'll take it for a little spin. Well, it actually runs and drives pretty good. I was testing the reverse. Usually the first sign one of these hydrostatics is getting bad is when you go in reverse and it's either really slow or it whines really bad. It's usually a sign that the hydro is getting weak, but this one seems like it's pretty good. The oil light and the battery light weren't on, so it must have been charging and had decent oil pressure. That starter started working on its own. Must have just been a little bit dirty in there. And then there's still a little bit of mouse nest junk coming out of it, but I'm gonna probably be putting this engine in a different mower, so I'll take the cover off and clean it properly, and we'll do an oil change and stuff on it. But as for the rest of this, it'll be a good parts machine. I'm always getting plenty of these John Deeres in that need parts, and these are getting older now, so they're getting more and more hours on them, or they need stuff like the hydrostatic transmissions and stuff and steering stuff. So I think I did okay on this one. I paid 90 bucks for it, and I got the deck with it. The deck and the engine are worth more than the 90 bucks I paid for it, so I think I will come out ahead on this one. But that's going to do it for this one. If you like this sort of thing, like the videos and subscribe to the channel, and we'll catch you on the next one.